Part 7. Seconds on a String. Rain has its own time signatures. Cities wear it like background music, but in the valley where patchwork met to sharpen plans, rain arrived like a percussionist who'd had too much coffee. It bounced off the tin roof of their borrowed cabin, a staccato rehearsal for something louder. They had the filings, the tin that hummed like a bell whenever Elias let his halo touch it. They had Abina's notes, line, staple, origin. They had Marcus's smile from Main Street burned into their retinas. They had grief packed in shoeboxes and sarcasm to fill the gaps. They also had no idea how to test a plan that required rewriting beginnings. The chalkboard of bad ideas. Rowan had drawn a diagram that looked like a cat that had lost a fight with string. Circles for people, lines for promises, little stars where consent mattered. Mika had labeled it Spider-Man, but sad. "We can't experiment on Marcus yet," Rowan said. Which means lab rats, Theo muttered. "Literal ones. I hate this already." Nor draped shadow across the board to give it borders. "We need something alive but small, something with a timeline we can read in an afternoon." "Flies," Elias said. "They're short-term biographies." Abina brought a jar of fruit flies from a university lab that still owed her favors. She set it on the table like a communion offering. Elias pressed reverse against one, and the room watched the speck vanish like it had been erased from the sentence. He pressed again, lighter, and the fly shivered back into a larva, wriggling against glass. "That's horrifying," Mika said. "That's data," Rowan corrected. They spent hours threading seconds through the filings, testing how long a life could be wound backward before it snapped. Sometimes the creature unraveled. Sometimes it stayed but younger. Consent wasn't an option here, and Elias felt the tax rise in his bones, a whisper of Rena's voice in every joint. By nightfall they knew two things. The line could be tugged if you had the bell as anchor. The further back you went, the heavier the toll. Marcus's interruption. The cabin door knocked at 2:03 a.m. No one knocks at that hour unless they're friend or predator. Rowan reached it first, pistol low. Marcus Veyne stood there in a raincoat, hair damp, holding a thermos like he'd just come from a hike. "You shouldn't test it on flies," he said pleasantly. "It's rude to small lives, and sloppy. You'll think they teach you everything, but a man isn't a fly. We're trickier threads." Elias clenched the filings tin until it rang in his palm. "You spying on us?" "Spying?" Marcus grinned. "No, I'm investing. You're the only interesting thing in a century." He poured himself coffee from his own thermos, as if he were the host. "You think you've found the other end of my line? Cute. Do you know how many lines have been tried? You think you're the first to pull?" "Are we?" Nor asked, voice ablade. Marcus sipped, eyes warm. "No, you might be the first with jokes though. And humor is dangerous. It makes even grief disobedient." "You're afraid," Elias said. Marcus laughed, rich as thunder. "Afraid? No. Anticipating? Yes. You might succeed. And if you do, then I'll be very small again, and someone will need to raise me. Who better than my would-be executioners?" Mika muttered, "Evil baby daycare, great." Marcus tipped his thermos. "Exactly. Imagine the comedy. You strip me of immortality, and you'll still be responsible for me. Tell me that's not deliciously cruel." Rowan aimed higher. "Get out." Marcus obeyed with that irritating grace. But as he left, he glanced at Elias. "When you thread me back, boy, remember this. Every second you use is a second you cannot keep for yourself. You'll win, maybe, but you'll run out of hours faster than I do." The aftermath. When he was gone, silence tasted of iron. Elias set the tin down, shaking. His hands had picked up a tremor, small but constant, a metronome for costs unpaid. "He's bluffing," Mika said. "No," Abina said. "He's teaching. Villains love to hold class." Rowan rewrote the plan on the board. Use filings as anchor. Consent as lever. Seconds as thread. Origin as target. And beneath it, remember who pays. Elias didn't sleep. He sat with the tin on his knees, watching rain hammer the roof like seconds falling. Endless, uncounted. He knew Marcus was right about one thing. Every pull on the line left him thinner. One day, he might rewind himself to nothing. But if the choice was that or letting Marcus remain unbroken, he would pay. He would always pay. Part 8. Threading the Unbroken. The rain stopped like a curtain pulling. Morning arrived slanted and silver, the kind of light that makes a plan look cleaner than it is. They went back to the city because myth lives in basements, but history happens curbside. Rowan chose the place like a chess player calls a square. A pocket park stitched between a museum and an old courthouse. One of those civic gestures that collects lunch breaks and bad decisions. Trees trimmed into manners. Benches welded to concrete. Bronze statue of a judge who'd never met them. The museum had a glass facade that reflected weather, which Nor liked. More surface to fasten shadow to. They arrived in twos and ones, like rain finishing. Nor walked a slow circle, hands loose, drawing moonless rope out of shade cast by the bench legs and the statue's hem. Mika climbed the base of the judge and sat beside Bronze shoes, swinging her feet, bag in her lap labeled "in case." Theo unfolded paper into geometric sins and slid them into pockets. Abina stood by the plaque and pretended to read it while she drew quiet lines in air with her finger. Notes only she could see. Alonzo sat on a low wall, palms resting, eyes half-lidded, the posture of a man about to host other people's pain. Elias stood in the center of Nor's circle, with the tin of filings in both hands. The bell hummed without sound. His bones did the translation. He'd allowed himself 6 hours of honest sleep and 3 more minutes of age. His right knee still predicted weather. Today it said, storm again soon. Consent? Rowan asked. We'll ask, Elias said. We won't get it. We might, Nor murmured, a slyness in her mouth that meant she had 3 plans and 2 were jokes. How do we make him come? Mika asked. We don't, Abina said. We simply do something rude in public, and he'll arrive to correct us. Etiquette is a leash. So Elias did the rudest public thing he could think of. He set the bell on the concrete, opened the tin, and rang a line through the filings with his halo. The invisible outline formed in air, iron dust sketching a bell that wasn't there, the shape of a chime around nothing. It sang in the sub-audible way that makes pigeons look up and toddlers laugh before the joke lands. People turned. No one saw magic. They saw an art student having a moment. A guard at the museum adjusted his cap and looked interested without risking job security. Marcus Veyne arrived like a man answering an invitation he'd written himself. No coat, shirt sleeves rolled. He stepped through the park's entrance with both hands visible, posture open, the anti-cop. He smiled at the statue like old colleagues. Good morning, he said to Elias. I see you've brought a bell to a knife fight. Knives are for later, Nor said, and her shadow circle snugged like a belt. Marcus looked down amused. Containment again. I'm flattered that you think I'm flattered. Elias swallowed his heartbeat down into his hands and let his halo widen. People at the edges of the park slowed by half a breath, not frozen, protected. Consent needed quiet. He nodded to Alonzo, who nodded back and loosened shoulders the way you do when you hang a weight on your frame. Mr. Veyne, Elias said, because names can be a kind of theater, and he was willing to stand on a stage. We need seconds. Marcus chuckled. And I need better coffee. Ask. Give me one, Elias said, palms up. One, Marcus said, eyes on the filings, as if he could smell iron as strongly as Elias heard it. Elias took 1 second. He had gotten smoother. The halo slid under skin like a coin into a slot machine well maintained. The clock in Marcus's face moved backward, a click no one else would see, but Elias felt it, a micro-tension releasing around the eyes, a breath that would be taken later. He threaded that second through the bell, anchoring it in dust. Again, Marcus said. He sounded pleased. Build your ladder. 2, Elias said. No, Marcus said lightly, don't be greedy. Elias smiled because Abina had warned him. Take what is given, make it expensive later. He took one again, then one again, building a rhythm. Ask a Grant thread. Mika mouthed the counts from the statue base like a kid watching a magician. Noor's circle hummed at the edges, shadow taut and unshowy. After 5, Marcus cocked his head. "You're doing math with jokes," he said. "Dangerous combination?" "Consent is comedy," Elias said, and took a 6th before Marcus could deny it. The bell drank the 2nd. The filings brightened in his hand. The cost rose like a tide, not a crash, a persistence. His fingers trembled, not from fear, from physics. Alonzo took a breath like a man agreeing to carry furniture, and the tremor softened by a thread. Debt moved. Elias didn't thank him. Alonzo would have charged for gratitude. "Now," Noor said. Elias tightened slow around Marcus's back, hunting the line the keeper had named. "Behind you." He found the resistance, a thread like a piano string glued to the spine of a century. He pulled, not hard, tug. The filings rang. The line remembered origin. Marcus's smile thinned. Not anger, focus. His hands went still. He took a step as if to place himself between something and harm, and found Noor's shadow rope insisting the circle was a circle on purpose. He didn't test it. He looked at Elias. "Careful. Careful is our brand," Rowan said dryly. Elias pulled harder. The world did the glassy thing, tilted not like falling, like choosing a different shelf. The museum's reflections jittered, a frame skipping. People on the edges of the park shook their heads and kept walking, brains drafting more reasonable memories even as reality changed key for a bar. Marcus wavered. Elias felt him younger by a handful of seconds, then more, a minute catching the hem of a minute and rolling it up. He fed the line through the bell, iron dust a spool paying out time backward. The filings wanted to fall. Noor's shadow cupped the air to keep them shaped. "Enough," Marcus said. The word hit the circle like a coin. Noor's not held. Consent doesn't walk backward because an immortal asks. The joke is funnier than that. Abina stepped closer, shoulder against Rowan's, eyes narrow. She was listening for the staple, the point where line and origin conversed. "Almost," she said. Elias took another second without asking aloud. Marcus had given 5. Etiquette allows interest. The bell sang. The line quivered. Marcus took a breath and hurt the way men do when their history is being touched. Not a pain you can share. The kind that sneaks into bones and hides in nouns. He kept his face arranged. Immortality teaches you to pass most exams. "Keep him," Elias said through his teeth, remembering the cloister's condition. "I will," Noor said, voice soft as a promise. She meant the moment, not the man. The universe heard either. "Consent," Mika whispered, palms up to no one in particular. He gave 1, then 1, then 5. She lifted the whoopee cushion in her bag and set it down again, because restraint is a kind of power. "Another," Elias said. He was past counting. His body was the abacus now. The bell's filings lifted and fell like a schooling fish. The line remembered a room in 1871 where a woman had stapled a man to endurance and asked him to keep a river clean. And then something failed. It wasn't Noor's knot. It wasn't the bell. It was Elias. The tax came due all at once. His right knee gave. The tremor in his hand jumped a register. The tick in his chest hiccuped in a way that suggested it would prefer an ambulance. He almost dropped the tin. Alonzo's head snapped up like a lifeguard spotting a boy underwater. He reached without touching, a trick he hated and could do anyway, and borrowed the tear in Elias's joint for a moment. His breath stuttered. His eyes went wet. He smiled through it like a waiter with a tray too heavy and no table. "2 more," Alonzo said, voice steady by force. "Take 2. Elias took 1. Marcus's hair at the temples shifted 1 gray back toward brown. "If you had eyes for that." The line sang tighter. Elias took 1 more. The park tilted again. This time it stayed tilted. A woman pushing a stroller paused and looked up at the museum glass because the sky inside it had rewound a cloud into a cleaner shape. A bus hissed as if sighing. The bronze judge considered mercy and forgot. "Anchor," Abina said. Elias put his palm flat over the tin, fingers splayed, and threaded the last 2 seconds he'd taken into iron so that the bell now kept them. He felt the world accept a ledger entry it didn't like, and then shrug, as bureaucracies do, and stamp it anyway. Marcus inhaled through his nose slowly. For the first time since they'd met, his jaw clenched. He glanced over Elias's shoulder, and found Mika's face, bright and prepared, Nor's hands, steady and made of night, Theo's pockets of papercraft threat, Rowan's weight of practical men, Abena's eyes like a grammar that refuses lazy sentences. He let the breath out. "You can do it," he said. He did not sound pleased. He did not sound angry. He sounded interested the way a tiger is interested in a gate latch. "Not today," Rowan said, "but soon." "Soon as a river," Marcus said, which meant both nothing and everything. Consent ended at 6, Elias said, because he wanted Marcus to know he had counted even through pain. "After that is interest. After that is theft. We don't steal, we collect." Marcus chuckled without joy. "You are building a religion against me," he said. "No," Nor said, "we're building a schedule." Marcus laughed then, a real laugh this time, because schedules had never killed him, and the idea was indecent enough to be charming. "You'll fail," he said mildly. "And again, and then you will learn to be cruel." "We already are," Mika said from the statue base. "We're making you cute." Marcus looked at her, really looked, eyes softening in that way dangerous men have when they find something adorable capable of harm. "I look terrible in rompers," he said. "Good," she said. "We're getting you stripes." He turned back to Elias. "You'll break first." "Probably," Elias said. "But I have something you don't." "Oh?" Marcus asked. "Relief," Elias said. "When it's over, I get to be done. You never do. That's the joke." Marcus's mouth twitched. He bowed, yes, bowed, a quarter inch of neck, because he was a man who had learned to admire lines even if they weren't his. He stepped to the edge of Nor's circle, testing. The knot let him pass, not because it had loosened, but because Nor had untied it with a gesture that looked like nothing. Etiquette. Never make a guest tear your house to leave. He walked away without looking back because villains and saints share that theatrical bone. The crowd resumed, pretending nothing had happened. A kid asked his father for ice cream. The father said no, with a face that meant later. The bronze judge judged nothing. Elias set the tin down on the bench and sat abruptly beside it, elbows on knees, hands dangling, sweat like rain's kinder cousin. The world didn't spin, he'd held it steady. It would cost him later. Alonzo slid down from the wall and sat on the ground in front of him, palms up. "Give me what you can't carry," he said. "Not today," Elias said, reflex. Then he glanced at Nor, who raised an eyebrow that could open doors, and he consented. Alonzo took a slice of the egg and set it on ice somewhere his training had taught him to store other people's emergencies. Abena looked at the filings. "We need more bells," she said. "The 10 will run out of memory." "I can file the frame," Kate said from behind them, because of course she had come. They'd texted her ring and she understood, and she held a small rasp like a scalpel. Nothing holier than iron. "Do it," Rowan said. "We'll feed seconds as we get them." "We'll also have to hide better," Theo said. "He let us because it was a park. He won't let us in a room he loves." "He loves rooms that behave," Nor said. "We'll take him to a room that doesn't." "Where?" Mika asked. Abena closed her eyes and pointed, not at a map, but at history. "The clinic has a sister," she said. "A church that learned to repent. South End. They kept the bell metal to cast new light fixtures and never understood why fixtures rang." She smiled. "Let's make the lamps sing." Rowan checked the time and nodded like a man counting soldiers off a train. "We eat," he said, "because logistics is love. Then we do it again. Smaller this time. Everywhere. We thread him in alleys and atriums and church naves and bus stops until the origin door is missing its hinges, and the only thing holding him up is etiquette." Mika pumped a fist. "Operation Tardiness." "Please don't name it," Rowan said. "Too late," she said, and wrote it in her notebook with a heart. They dispersed like a subtle weather system. Elias stayed put for a minute longer, because he wanted to learn what his body felt like when it wasn't a tool. He looked up at the museum glass. A cloud moved forward like a confession, and then snapped back into the present where it belonged. He laughed, weakly but true. Rena would have approved, he thought. Then he corrected himself. Rena does approve. The dead sometimes get to be present tense if you're stubborn enough. He stood, pocketed the tin, and nearly stumbled into a man who'd been waiting politely at the edge of the circle. "Mr. Grant?" the man said. He wore a mail carrier's uniform and anxiety like a tie. "A package came to the brick place for you. No return. Smelled like trees." Elias took the small box and already knew. The orange tree. Marcus had fruit now, ripened by someone else's patience. He opened it. Inside, 3 ripe oranges and a note in fountain pen hand. "For interest, M.V." Elias took one orange, peeled it in long ribbon, and ate it standing up, juice on his thumb. He left the note in the box and tucked the other 2 fruits into Alonzo's hands, because sweetness is a debt you should never carry alone. That night, in the South End church, they made the lamps sing. Kate stood at the back with her rasp and her grin. Nor strung shadow in the choir loft and made a circle that didn't look like a circle until you left it. Mika held hands with an old woman who'd come to light a candle for a husband 60 years gone, and told the truth to a God who seemed to be listening. Marcus came because etiquette said he must attend when bells ring. They took seconds until the air glowed with brass and memory. They threaded them. They didn't run. He left, late by a minute, to his own immortality, which is the beginning of satire. They did it again in an atrium with a clock that couldn't be bothered to be honest. Again at a corner where a trolley used to turn. Again on a bridge that held hands with 2 neighborhoods and never asked to be paid. The city started to learn a new rumor. Sometimes, at noon, somewhere, you could feel a joke pass through the shade. A man would flinch and smile like he'd swallowed a sparkler. A team that never asked for interviews would high-five without touching. A bell would ring inside iron. Elias slept when he could. He didn't hold his age every day. He learned to pay without martyrdom. His knee sent weather bulletins. He answered with stretches instead of bravado. He wrote a line in his phone and didn't burn it. "I'm not a saint. I'm a schedule." Week later, Kate filed the bell frame to a crescent you could wear as a brooch. She didn't. She put the filings in the tin and kissed the rim because she was that kind of librarian. Rowan put a map of the city on the wall and marked the spots where they'd made him late. Mika drew a baby with a crown at the bottom and wrote ETA. TBD. Theo folded a paper crown and left it on the tin. Nor took it off and put it back when no one was watching. Abena looked at Elias and said, "When it works, you'll feel it like nothing you've ever felt, and you'll be tempted to do more. Don't. Leave him enough." "Enough what?" he asked. "Enough person," she said, "so the joke lands." He nodded. He understood. They were not killing a dragon. They were stealing a title and leaving a very small boy who would need a nap and a guardian and a timeout chair, and maybe, if the universe had any mercy left, a second chance at being kept by a kinder promise. They were almost there. He could feel it. Every thread hummed. The line tightened. The bell remembered. And far away, in a room without windows, Marcus Veyne stood looking at a mirror and practiced smiling with baby teeth. He was not afraid. He was rehearsing. He would be late. They would be on time. The joke was nearly ready.